Now, I'm a nurse with Plunkett Line. I'm here with Andrew from the Citizens Advice Bureau, and we're really happy that you're all here with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Kia ora, lovely to be here.
Hi. So we're here today to be discussing the consumer rights in New Zealand, what they are, and how they protect you.
Yeah, so I've been in my role here at CAB for more than 15 years and really passionate about the service we provide. So firstly, quick shout out to all our amazing volunteers who are there to support people in a whole range of areas, including consumer rights. So I've been involved in helping people understand and advocate for consumer rights for almost 15 years, probably slightly longer.
Amazing, amazing. So, getting us started, Andrew, can you tell us a bit about consumer rights in New Zealand?
Sure. Basically, I mean, the key things to know are that if you buy something from a business, you do have automatic protections under consumer law. So they're not something you have to sign up for, or you don't have to buy an extra warranty. You have some default rights whenever you buy something from a business if you're in New Zealand. This mostly comes under the Consumer Guarantees Act, which sometimes people talk about the CGA, an acronym for the Consumer Guarantees Act. And it applies to basically everything you would buy in your household. Your rights do vary a bit depending on whether you're buying from a business or a private seller, which is something we'll talk a little bit more about. Um, I think one of the key messages that we generally have around consumer rights is don't be afraid to make sure you do know your rights and are able to act on them. We've got a campaign at the moment which is called Ask for Better, which is really about encouraging people to know and act on their rights. So I think it's useful just to have a kind of a general sense of what some of those key rights are. There's a whole range of different rights that you have when you buy something, but there are a few key ones. So one is basically if you buy something from a business, it should be of acceptable quality. So that means it should do what you'd expect it to do when when you bought it. So if you buy a baby monitor, for example, it shouldn't stop working after a month. So there's a right around things basically have to be durable, don't have any major faults. Um, a second right to be aware of is that things should be fit for purpose. So when we say fit for purpose, it basically means that if you ask for something to fulfill a particular purpose, so let's say you're buying a buggy for particularly jogging because you like to jog, and you tell the person in the shop what you're wanting, what they sell you has to be fit for that purpose. So it should be good for when you're jogging. So fit for purpose. So matches the description is the kind of third key area of rights under the Consumer Guarantees Act. Basically, it means that if something's advertised, it has to live up to whatever it's advertised for. So if you're buying a nappy bag and it says it's leak proof, you shouldn't expect leaks. It's as simple as that. So it should make sure it matches the description, and it should last a reasonable time. So um, it should. So if you buy like a $700 buggy, it should last longer than a few months. Now um, you'll have heard when I talk about this that some of these things are a little bit variable. So we talk about acceptable quality, fit for purpose. So that's not always black and white what that is, and it can depend a little bit about things like, oh, how much did you pay for um, your baby monitor, a baby monitor that maybe you paid $20 for, you might not expect to last as much as if you paid $500. So there are different expectations depending on what you pay and what you'd expect. But regardless of those expectations, everything has to meet those basic guarantees. Um, it's also worth knowing that those guarantees don't just apply to when you buy a like a buggy or a cot or whatever it is you're buying. They also apply to services as well. So there are some guarantees around kind of consumer services. If you toddlers put something down the toilet and you've got to call a plumber, um,
Oh,
there are things like um, you know the work's got to be done of a reasonable standard. It should be relatively timely. It should be at a reasonable cost if you haven't already agreed on a cost. So you've panicked, your toilet's blocked up, you called the plumber in, they can't just charge you $5,000 because they want to. It's got to be a reasonable price if you haven't already agreed on a price. So it's not only the goods, but also the services you buy as well.
Oh, that's great information, Andrew. So, how does the Consumer Guarantees Act work when you're buying either from a business versus online or from a secondhand store?
Yeah, so I'll start out with the business versus online. So if you buy something online or you buy in a retail shop and you're buying from a business, in theory your rights are the same, but it does get a little bit complicated because obviously some people are buying online from a New Zealand-based business and some people are buying online from like a Temu or a Pandamart or an Amazon or whatever. In theory, you still have those same rights under the Consumer Guarantees Act. But as you might expect, sometimes it's a bit harder to enforce those rights when it's dealing with a big company overseas. And particularly the smaller ones can be harder. But any business that you buy from, if you're in New Zealand, that should be covered by the Consumer Guarantees Act. And that also includes businesses who are selling secondhand. So if you buy something from a secondhand dealer, they still have to meet the Consumer Guarantees Act. But as I talked about before, there's some variability. So if you buy something secondhand, you probably wouldn't expect it to last as long. You might not expect it to be as durable, but you wouldn't expect it to like break the day after you bought it from the secondhand shop. But you might be like, oh yes, it's lasted a year. I would normally expect my buggy to last 7 years, or whatever. There might be there's some wriggle room in there in terms of what you might expect from those second-hand goods, but you're still covered. So they should still be fit for purpose, acceptable quality, match the description, last a reasonable time, bearing in mind how much you paid for them and where you bought them from. But so that's the case for if you buy from a second-hand dealer. And then, of course, lots of people, especially at the moment when there's such cost of living issues for people, are buying directly from others via something like Trade Me or Facebook Marketplace, a whole range of different avenues people might buy secondhand directly from an individual. If you buy something from an individual, then you're not covered by the Consumer Guarantees Act. So you don't have anything like the same level of protection. So it is worth, if you are buying from those places, it's worth doing a few things like trying to make sure you can actually look at the goods in person if possible. So particularly for those larger purposes, so you get a chance to inspect them. Um, do things like if you pay on TradeMe using Ping or a credit card, then you can potentially have some protection if something goes wrong. It's also worth if you're buying from a private seller, making sure that you do have their full name and contact details so that if something does go wrong and you do want to take action, you do have some avenues to do that. It's a little bit more complicated to resolve a dispute with a private seller. So again, you don't have quite as many protections as you do. But the one thing to be aware of, even though you're not covered by the Consumer Guarantees Act, you are covered when you buy something from a private seller if they've misled you. So they've said good as new, and it clearly wasn't as good as new. It was all worn and battered. Then you could ask for your money back because they've misled you about what it is. So you do have some protection. Basically, if you're buying something from an individual, it shouldn't be misleading what they've told you about the things that you're buying.
Oh, great ideas. So, even if we're super diligent, things can happen. How do we put things right?
Well, I think the first thing is to make sure you've kind of got a plan for when something does go wrong and you want to get it sorted. Um, know what you want. So if you go back to the retailer or the seller, have a clear idea of what it is that you want. A few key things to understand are um, it's generally the retailer's responsibility to fix a problem if something's gone wrong, if something's broken. So they shouldn't send you off and say, "Oh, you've got to see the manufacturer." It should be the retailer who's responsible for it. It's worth maybe writing down a couple of points about what's gone wrong, just so you've got it clear in your own mind when you're talking to them, and say what you want. Under consumer law, there's generally a couple of different ways that a problem can be fixed. It could be that you could get it fixed, you could get it replaced, or you could get it refunded. And basically, that breaks down into two categories when you're a consumer. If the fault is considered minor, so it's cosmetic, it doesn't have a huge impact, but you want to get it sorted, generally
Hmm.
the retailer will be able to choose whether they are going to give you a refund, whether they're going to repair it, or whether they're going to replace it. So the retailer will say, oh yes, we can fix that, or oh no, here's a new one, or we're going to refund you. But if it's a major problem, like something really is broken really badly, um, something stopped working entirely, then that's what's considered a major problem. And then
Hmm.
you can choose, you can say, I want a refund because you don't want a replacement because you thought, oh my God, that was terrible. Don't want another one of those. So when there's a major problem, you can ask for your remedy.
Oh, that's really good to know our rights. Thanks for that. So, thinking about Whānau with young Pepe or tamariki, we know that there's a lot of stuff, like from prams to car seats to baby monitors, toys, and more. Um, and because it's stuff for our youngest and most vulnerable, it makes sense that we want to take extra care. What advice do you have for Whānau around products for Pepe and tamariki?
Yeah, it's important to understand that a lot of products that are aimed at tamariki are covered by product safety standards. So they've got to meet some certain standards, no matter who's selling them, and this includes second-hand sellers. So those are things like children's nightwear, children's toys, cots. Um, Car seats, a whole range of things. So it is worth making sure that things have a product standard sticker on them. Um, and it's also worth being aware of really great information. There's a product safety.gov.nz website that has a whole lot of information on it. It's really worth investigating if you are buying those things. It has a list of items that have been recalled for safety reasons, so you can double check before you buy something that hasn't supposed to have been recalled. But also it has some really handy tips to help you think through if you're buying a children's toy. It helps you think through what are the things that you should be aware of from a safety point of view. So it's really worth looking through that to get a good idea of how to keep kids safe. It is worth noting, secondhand goods still have to um, comply with those legal safety requirements as well. So if you're buying something secondhand, it should still comply with those safety recalls.
Oh, that's great, Andrew. Thanks so much. It's really helpful to have that information. So, to finish us up, do you have some practical tips for parents and caregivers?
Yeah, so one of the first thing is just making sure that you do a bit of basic preparation in case something does go wrong with your purchases. So that's things like making sure that you keep your receipts, making a record of when you buy something. Um, it's also worth, when you're in store, being really clear about why you want something, because that gives you some extra safety around whether something's fit for purpose. So if you just go into the store, pick something off without it saying what it was aimed to do, then the shop might say, well, it wasn't meant for the purpose that you bought it for. But if you've gone and said, I need the buggy that's good for jogging rather than just one that's good for going around the shops, there's a different requirement then. So it's worth just making sure that you have talked about why you want something. Also, there's often quite a lot of pressure to upsell people into buying things like extended warranties. And in
Hmm.
general, an extended warranty doesn't give you any more rights than you would normally have under the Consumer Guarantees Act. So we don't generally encourage people to buy extended warranties. The one advantage in reality of extended warranties is that sometimes it's buying you a better service if something does go wrong, but your actual rights should be the same. So it's uh, it's worth just understanding that. Let's say you buy something and it says it's got a 3-year warranty. It doesn't actually mean anything under the Consumer Guarantees Act. It could be that, you know, if it's a $1,000 buggy for your babies, you might expect that would last 10 years. And so if it breaks after 6 years and they say it was out of warranty, well, that's irrelevant as far as the Consumer Guarantees Act is concerned.
Oh, that's good to know. We actually have a relevant question from Nikita. She wanted to know how long can you go back on the Consumer Guarantee Act if you purchase something from a New Zealand shop? Can you expect the product to last quite a long time, but it breaks and it's repaired within the first year and then needs further repairs for the next couple of years? At what point does an item become a faulty item if the repairs keep breaking in the same area, and what is the course of action?
Yeah, no, this is an interesting one because we do get the questions quite a lot around repeat things. You've bought a baby monitor and it stops working after 3 months, and they replace it, and the next one lasts 4 months. Um, So, in general, you would consider that, well, firstly, once it's replaced, kind of the timing resets as far as the durability of the goods. So, if it breaks after 3 months and the next one breaks after 4 months, that's not 7 months that you've had the item. It's 3 months for the first item, 4 months for the second. So,
Mm.
it's not like the warrant, the kind of the implied warranty starts from when you bought the item. It's when you got the last one that was replaced. But I think in this sort of situation where you've had maybe a couple of replacements, it would be absolutely legitimate to say that you consider a major fault. You can go to a retailer and you can use, there's some particular wording that you can use. You can say that you're rejecting the goods, that you consider them faulty, and that you would like a refund. So certainly if you are experiencing a situation where something's broken a couple of times in the same way, I would consider that would be a major fault that you could ask for a refund.
Oh, that is such good advice. Thank you so much for your expertise. So, do you have any last advice? Maybe, how can consumers get a hold of the Citizens Advice Bureau?
Yeah, so this is the other thing, just to know that there are people out there, if you do strike a problem, like the example in that question there, where you're a little bit unsure about what your rights are, or you've gone to a retailer and they've said something different, or they're not respecting your rights, know that there are people there who can help you. So you can call the CAB on 0800 367 222, or you can actually just drop into your local CAB. Or chat online. And we do have a heap of really useful consumer information on our website. That's cab.org.nz. But I think it's really useful for people, for you to know that there are people there to support you to exercise your rights. So if you ever get stuck, or sometimes we get people who just want to talk through what they're planning to do to get some reassurance about things before they go and talk to a retailer. And honestly, sometimes if you've got stuck with a retailer, just saying, I've been to the CAB and they told me that you had to refund me in this situation can make a huge difference. That you've got someone in external perspective. So do encourage people, if they need any help at all, to give us a call.
Oh, that is great advice, Andrew. Thank you so much for your expertise. And thank you, everyone, for watching today and commenting. And I hope everyone has a really great day. And we'll be back later in the week with more advice from the Citizens Advice Bureau.
Kira, thanks so much. Lovely chat.